QYLD is the NASDAQ 100 covered call ETF, and if you had invested in this ETF over the past 12 months, you would have had distribution percentage of 16.98%. In a time when ETFs like VOO that track the S&P 500 are paying yields like 1.5%, this can look very, very attractive to a lot of people. And look, if we compare QYLD to VOO here, we could see the return since the inception of QYLD. Now, how does it look? Okay, 56.89% has been the growth of QYLD, so not that much, but you're getting some growth. VOO, of course, 144%. So if you had invested in the S&P 500, you'd have had a lot more money down the road than if you had started off with QYLD. Okay, but the thing is, QYLD gives you this crazy great distribution yield, right? Generally, it's been about 10%, let's say, since you would have invested in this. So here's the problem. You know, kind of like things are always too good to be true when it comes to investing in finance. So this is actually investing the dividends. So if you reinvest all of the dividends, you get a 56.89% return with QYLD. But what happens if you don't reinvest the dividends? Because I know a lot of people that I've heard of personally that they invest in QYLD because they need to take the distribution of the money out. They need that 10% yield. They need that 16% yield, whatever it is. They need to take that out. They need it monthly. They're not buying QYLD to try to grow it for capital appreciation. They're just trying to take as much money out as possible. So when I take off of the reinvested dividends, suddenly QYLD goes from a 56.89% return to negative 38.29% return. And so that doesn't look that great for someone who might be owning QYLD for a long period of time. Maybe you're in retirement, maybe you're financially independent and retired early and you're relying on this to get you through 20, 30 years. This thing does not look very good if you're taking out all of the money in a distribution. As you can see, VOO is up 99%, while QYLD, when you distribute dividends, is down 38%. Now, I know there are people watching this that are needing income. They need the money that QYLD is giving them, but I just want you to know that over time, there is a very good chance that QYLD will decrease in value. How much will it decrease in value? Will you run out of money? I don't know. What I do know is taking out the entire yield of QYLD is not probably going to help you get a very, very far down the runway. So what can you do? What can you do here? Let's compare QYLD with VOO, and let's see how these two have done in terms of distributions. So because QYLD has averaged about 10% in yield over the past, multiple years since its inception date, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, let's say we distributed all of the yield from QYLD, and then we're going to look at VOO, and we're going to say, what if we distributed 10% per year from VOO? How do these look together? Let's compare these two. So if we invested $100,000 in the QYLD, this is the income we would have had or received via the yield that is coming off of this thing. So basically we have 10,000 in the first year, 8, 7, 7, 10, 9, 9, 11, 6. So what's happening is even though the distribution rate is high, what you're doing is because QYLD is falling in value, the yield is getting a little smaller, right? So you started with 100,000, and in 2020, the yield was 10%, same yield, but we're getting less money, 9,260, but the same amount of yield basically as it was back in 2014. So because we're losing some value in the amount of money that is inside this ETF, not getting that capital appreciation, the yield is actually even going to be decreasing a little bit. Now let's take a look at VOO. Now it's not going to be apples to apples because QYLD actually didn't yield 10% every single year, and we're taking out 10% of VOO every single year. But this is going to at least help us kind of visualize what's going on here. So when we start off with the balance of, we started with $100,000 going into this ETF. Then after you take out the 10% of the money, you have $10,189 coming out of VOO. During 2011, then it ends up being $91,705. That's what we're looking at here. So we come down here. These are the cash flows over time. And as you can see, the cash flows are increasing. Why is that? We're taking out 10% every single year, but because there's capital appreciation, the portfolio value is increasing, and so too is our 10% distribution that's coming out of this portfolio. So again, if we come back and we look at QYLD, we're seeing $11,000 come off of QYLD and only $86,000 in 2021 with a 12.50% yield, right? Coming back over here in 2021 for VOO, it's $147,000, only a yield of 1.59, but we are going to be distributing 16.34% because we're taking $16,384 because we're taking out 10% of the money out of VOO. Now today, 2022, bear market, things are not looking good. There's still $123,000 in VOO's ETF portfolio, and then if you look at QYLD, there's only $66,000. So you're down $30-something thousand with QYLD, but if you look at VOO, you're actually up $20-something thousand. So 50 grand plus difference between these two ETFs, to me, that's a very significant amount of money, especially when you got actually more income with VOO than QYLD. Okay, so let's talk about another way to look at this. It's not that QYLD is bad. It's definitely not what I'm trying to say in this video. I'm not trying to say no one should invest in QYLD. That's not the point. The point is that QYLD in and of itself is not the solution to all problems, and it can't be, and it probably shouldn't be. So instead of thinking of QYLD as the solution, let's think of QYLD as a piece of a puzzle, a piece of a portfolio that we can create that might help us, okay? So if we look at a portfolio of just QYLD, that's our portfolio 1 here. If we look at portfolio 2, we're looking at QQQ, which is the NASDAQ 100. That's what QYLD writes covered calls on, right? So we're looking at the actual index, QQQ, and then we're also going to do a portfolio of different ETFs. We have QYLD, SCHD, QQQ, and we have BND. So here we have a diversified portfolio of different ETFs, and the other ones are just specific. You are only investing in these one ETF. So how do these look? So okay, take a look at portfolio number 1. That is QYLD. Now we gotta remember where we're going. What's going on here? We are assuming that someone invests 100 grand and they're taking out in distributions 10% every single year. Okay, so essentially what's happening with QYLD, they're reinvesting that the dividend, right? The yield you're getting, but you're still taking money out. Okay. So $100,000 grows to 70. I shouldn't say grows, it declines to 70,000. So you lose about 30 grand here almost. So compounded annually, you're down about 3.95% every year is what's happening here. And think about that. Over time, how much money will you have left if that was to occur, during 30 years? It's not good. That scares me personally. I wouldn't want to have that burden and thought in my mind that this might happen. So then you have the maximum drawdown of negative 17.18%, and that's in a monthly time period. So that's the most that this thing fell. So, okay, next. Standard deviation, we're going to talk about that in a sec because that's very important. But I want to compare the standard deviation to portfolio 2. This is QQQ. Now, QQQ, $100,000 grows to $157,000. So we're talking about over twice as much money. It's had a compound annual growth rate of 5.42%. The standard deviation is 17.77%. And this is where we really need to talk about the difference in risk between these two options, because standard deviation is essentially measuring the volatility of these ETFs. And so when we look and we see a much more volatile ETF at 17.77% standard deviation versus 11.53%, we can't really compare these two, because if you're retired, if you are someone who doesn't want risk, if you're risk averse, it's not like they're not apples to apples. One is much more risk than the other. One had a decline of 17.33%, while QLD had 17% decline. So a much larger decline. Can you mentally take that? That's a lot to take sometimes. And so a lot of people, they don't want to own something that has high standard deviations and high risk because they don't want the volatility. But then we have portfolio 3. So portfolio 3, $100,000. This thing does decline. 91,125 is what you end up with here. The compound annual growth rate is actually negative 1.07%. But look at this. The standard deviation is 10.42. So that is significant. Why is that significant? Because it is less risky than QYLD. So instead of going with just QYLD, what you do is you create a diversified portfolio of ETFs, and those diversified portfolio of ETFs gives you a less risky, a less volatile portfolio, and it gives you more money by $20,000 more over the next 9 years. And again, you're taking out $10,000, 10% every year of this thing. And actually, it has a less worse drawdown as well. So negative 16.49 versus negative 17.18. So all I'm trying to say in this video is that don't necessarily think of QYLD as the savior of your portfolio, of your life. You know, it's not designed to take over everything. In my opinion, it's not designed to solve all of your problems at all. It is designed to be a piece of a potential portfolio, and that is all. I know there are YouTubers that are talking about QYLD like it is the best thing that you could ever invest in. Look at this yield, but you cannot look at it in one dimension. You have to talk about QYLD in multidimensionally. Does that make sense? Multidimensionally, QYLD is like the multiverse, okay? You have to look at this not just based on the distribution yield that you can receive on it, but also the capital appreciation and what happens as you take money out over time. So I've done another video on QYLD where I talk about maybe don't distribute all of your money up from QYLD, but maybe just distribute, let's say if you distribute 80% of your money or distribute 70% of your money, you know, what happens? So that's another way to kind of look at this. So I'll link that below if you want to take a look, but that is all I have for this video. I hope this helps. I know that there are people watching this who need QYLD because they need income because they don't have enough money to live on, and I just want you to understand the, I guess, risk that you might be taking if that is you. That's all I have for this video. I hope you liked it. I hope this helps. I hope it at least brings this topic to your mind in case you don't know what's going on with QYLD and the potential of it going forward. If you like this video, please hit the like button. Subscribe to see more videos like this one, and I do have another video coming up on the end screen right now. Thanks everyone so much for watching. I do want to remind you I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This is just my opinion, and let's face it, I am not right 100% of the time. So please do your own due diligence.